Hello everyone, welcome to the Drupal Meetup. We are organizing in London today, and the last one was we couldn't organize, but hopefully this will be a successful one. We have seen beautiful faces today. So the washrooms are over to the left. Help yourself, have some drinks, snacks. Some of us already had, and yeah, let's start. Today Vijay will be having a session. He will be talking about Drupal in the wild, and hopefully it will be a really wonderful session. And after the session we'll be hanging out in the pub. I'll be guiding you through after the session, so let's have a chat over there. Hopefully you enjoy the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will put this one somewhere here. Hello, good evening. Thanks for coming. So this is one of the case studies. So this is a project that I've been working for the last 5 years. Yeah, hopefully you will find it useful. And obviously, if you have any questions, you can stop me and ask questions like why we did it, what we did. We can discuss. And apparently, we don't have the second session, so we have more time now. So, okay, so this is an overview. So first, we will look at the architectural overview of what we are doing, like what this project is about, and high-level design, like some of the implementation details, or what are the components that are involved when we build this application. And there are some implementation specifications. Again, I picked kind of a top 4 items, like what I thought as a project it was a huge success, and we kind of go through individual items. So this is more like why do we decided to go with a particular approach, and what are the advantages of using it. And then the performance metrics, it's a kind of a high-level performance metrics. We use JMeter to measure the performance, and we do the JMeter testing every quarter of the application. So this is like, I believe this is probably 3rd or 4th quarter of last year's metrics. So I have some rough numbers. And then some tools and tips. Again, this is like more like using Drupal in a way that's more beneficial to your application. I have like 2 examples what we do as a trick, so you might find it useful. And then some of the contributed modules. Again, this project's been kind of a very big project, so we have a list of modules that we took from contributor module space, and then we also contributed probably like 10 modules, and I have like 4 or 5 modules that listed here to show you, what those modules do, and probably you might use it in your project as well. Okay, so this is a large-scale enterprise that's in North America, one of the top telecom company in North America, and they wanted to build a e-verification system. And some of the requirements, first of all, they kind of set on having a headless Drupal because as an organization, they are moving towards headless application. They wanted to use more of Next.js / React apps. And the initial plan when we built the application, when we started the application, was like a one front-end application, one, like a Drupal API. Right now, we have about 10 front-end application consuming all the data from the same Drupal backend. So it's grown more than what we thought it would be. It went across all the different part of the organization. So now they all started using the backend side of our system, and they build their own front-end applications. So it's kind of enhanced over, I think when we started 2020, and then we launched around 2022. And then since then, it's been grown to different headless, like a front-end apps. And third point is performance is a key. Again, this system is used by a particular period of the year where high traffic, and then the rest of the year it would be kind of a low to medium traffic. So we need to build the system that can perform when the traffic peaks up. So that was one of the initial requirements. And then the data, again, the system was initially built in a Drupal 7, and we had about 3 years worth of data migrated to the Drupal 8 system, because the data that we're supposed to hold has some impact on the business rules that we have to follow. Like if the customer already there, they need to have a different reactions based on their status where they are. And complex data structure. Again, the complex data structure part, I have some slides to explain why it is complex or how it is complex. First of all, just to explain what the e-verification is, here is some sample how the system would look like, right? Imagine I work for Apple. Apple decided to build a system for all the organizations to have some kind of a discount based on where they work, or based on the organization and Apple agreeing on some, some employees benefit that's saying, okay, if you work for NHS, Apple wants to give 20% discount. So that's between NHS and Apple. They agree on some agreement, and then once the agreement is signed, either Apple or NHS, they would send an email blast, or they would provide a newsletter, internal newsletter saying, as an NHS employee, you have 20% discount on Apple iPhone. Please use the link to redeem your, like a discount. And then they reach us. So that's where we enter. That verification system is us. These slides, probably a bad idea. Everything is black, but there's a square there. And then we do the verification, and then we send finally, once the user is verified, we send a coupon, which is a unique code, and that code goes to the Apple external, like for us, it's external site, but that coupon code contains a lot of information about the customer, about the organization, everything. And based on that, they redeem that offer from the Apple side. So in a way, we kind of in the middle doing just the verification part. And once we are done, based on what they choose here, like the customer, the one we verify them, two we show the products that they get discount, and that information we send it to the Apple again, like the third-party portal where they can buy the product. So we call that as a fulfillment system, and the fulfillment system has its own kind of verification as well. So they verify we verify the customer, they verify that the customer lives in the same address and things like that based on the service they are going to consume.
So with the verification,
yeah.
Have you got a different system for each company? For example, does the NHS have a different verification system than the BBC and their own verification system?
No, so the verification system is the one that we built. In the system, we have configured all different organizations and what offer they would have. So inside, say for example, if you're coming from NHS, like if you're an NHS employee, so the verification can happen either by your email address, which is they can, inside our verification system, we add a new organization, which is NHS, and we say, if anyone with this email domain, then we verify them as a NHS employee, and we send an email with a unique link to verify that they have access to the email. That means they are employee. So we create those organizations in our system, and then in those each organization, we configure what kind of offers they have. So that 10% versus 20% is defined on an individual organization level. The next slide, I think, make things a little bit easier. Voila. So this is how it works. So you have a customer, you come in, and then you have an organization. So each organization have a list of offers, and then each offer has a list of add-ons. So for example, that organization is NHS. The NHS has 3 different offers based on the time that you come in. Like the data, how the offer changes has like a 2-3 metrics. 1, it could be a time of the year. 2, it could be the place that you live. Based on your postcode, you may get a different offer because instead of mobile phone, imagine you're getting a broadband, right? So then for broadband person living in London, you get a 30% discount, versus someone living in Manchester get a 20% discount or something like that. So it could be based on the time of the year, it could be based on your personal information, and then it could also sometimes it could be based on the current services that you have. So if you have a phone already, then you get a different discount. You may get like a 25% discount because you are exchanging your old phone for a new phone, things like that. So you have more than one offer configured at a given time in the organization. And then inside the offer, you have add-ons. So for example, if you buy iPhone 16 Pro, then you get 20% discount on headphones, or you make, things like that. So again, you can't buy individual add-ons on its own. unless you buy the main offer. So you have to buy the iPhone to get the add-on specific discounts. Okay. So this is some numbers. Again, this is where the complexity come in. So the customer, which is we call customer or submission, like each customer come and fill their personal information. We call it submission. That one has about 45 fields, right? Again, that's an entity because, again, I didn't explain all the things that we do. Like I just extracted the part that makes sense. So one of the field on the customer is called organization, which is an entity reference field. And then organization has about 30 fields. One of the field is offer field. So offer, again, I simplified it a little bit, but we call it as a group. And in the group, you have 4 or 5 offers, and then you attach the group to the organization, right? So that way you don't have to worry too much about it. And then inside offer, you have all the add-ons. So again, add-ons is a multi-cardinality entity reference field, and add-on is another entity type, right? And that has like a 20 fields. And then, sorry, yeah.
Well, do you mind if I ask, do you ever have an add-on that's associated with multiple offers, or is it
yes.
strictly?
No, you can have same add-on multiple offer. For example, they can give like say 10% discount, flat discount on even add-on could be outside Apple. Say, imagine Apple has some connection with EE, and then they can say if you buy an iPhone Pro, then you get a 20 GB data free from EE, and they can create that and they can attach it to any number of offer. And then, yeah, anyone who goes through that process, they would get to see it. Again, the filter happens every level. So imagine this add-on is configured to available only for customer from London, or it is only available for existing customers, so a customer already in the system, then it would only show to them. So even though the offer has 10 add-ons, based on the time of the year, based on your personal details, your organization details, you may get only 3 add-ons, right? So that's a number of fields that we need to have. And then this is the number of entities that we have on each type, right? So we have about 15 million customers, and then we have about 7,000 organizations, and then we have about 1,000 offers, 1,000 add-ons. So you can imagine like it's all like a data, and this is where the complexity come in. Like every time each customer come in, you are loading about at least about like a 15 entities, and you're just generating that data to present to them. So the way the verification system works, again, probably that's the next slide.
With the customer,
yeah.
I think you said it had 45 fields for a customer.
Yeah.
Do they have to fill in all those fields?
No. So some of the fields are auto-completed, some of the fields are filled manually by them. So there's a form would be like a name, email, phone number, and things like that. But then there are other details that we pull based on that information, and that we save in the backend. So the workflow, the customer workflow would be they come, they submit a form, they get an email first, whether they're verifying by their email or verifying by some ID verification like their employee ID, whatever the details are. First they get an email. When they click the email, so if it's an email based verification like the nhs.co.uk email address, they would directly go through the offers page because that email is verified. That means you are part of the organization. But if they decided, say, okay, I'm an NHS employee, I land on the form, but I fill my Gmail address, for example, then you need to do the verification that like you're deciding there saying, I don't want to work email, I want to use my personal email. Then we send an email. When you click the link in the email, it sends you to another page where you have to upload your proof. So then the number of fields I was talking about on the organization, you can provide a list of proofs that you accept per organization. So for example, NHS, we accept a NHS, like a salary slip and NHS employee ID, whereas for BBC, we accept only BBC, BBC ID card. We don't accept the salary slip. Or you can define what you wanted to accept. So inside NHS, imagine they have a specific thing that they're providing for all the employees. They can accept that one as well. And they can go on a organization level, and they can enter that information. So given organization have a multiple verification types, like the proof types they can have. And they can also have multiple verification. So like email is one verification, and your proof upload is another verification. One organization might say, I don't want to verify by email because not all my organization employees are, have like a separate domain, but I want to use personal email. Then they can configure just only personal email. Like in that case, even you put a company email, it doesn't accept that as a company email. It sends you the email, but when you go there, it asks you to upload the proof, right? And then you go to the offer page. So the offer page, you can decide which offer you wanted to pick and which add-on you wanted to pick. And then when you click redeem, then we generate a JWT token which with all the information that the redeem system needs. And then we send that payload to the coupon system, right? And the coupon system take that information and generate a unique token. And that token is something that carried to the third-party portal. And the third-party portal, which is the redeem system, which goes and fetches same information from the coupon system with this same token value, with the JWT, and pull all the customer information, and they proceed the fulfillment. So the fulfillment sometimes happens offline, sometimes happens online, but our side, once the fulfillment is done, our job is done. Like once they left our portal, our job is done. Now, this is like a first fresh customer, right? I'm a new person coming in, buying that. So 2 years down the line, I wanted to come back again. Then they come to the same flow, but we may not create a new submission at that point. We try to load the existing submission they already have, and we try to provide an upgrade option instead of providing a new purchase option. And the upgrade option, based on the offers I was talking about before, that might change now, because they may not see a new offer, which may be like a 30% discount, but the upgrade you might get a 10% discount because you're already existing customer. Similar to some of our broadband deal that we do here, So next one is high-level design. As I mentioned before, we don't do, like I didn't explain all the things in the system. Mostly we saw submission management, offer management, and then there are other systems. So there is a notification system, probably duplicated, I just noticed. Hopefully not more. Reporting system as well. Okay. Yeah, I had to make it nice, 9 boxes, I need to fill in something. Hopefully next presentation, if I do this one, I will update that one. So the notification system, we have 2 different types of notification. So as of now, we discuss only about the end user, the people coming and using the portal. But on the admin side, we have about 15 different roles, meaning like 15 different admin users who can come and manage their offers, organizations, and all this other information, right? So the notification, we have 2 different notifications. One is the email notification. We send it to customers. We send it to our internal portal admin users. And the second one is an internal message system. There is a module called Drupal message, like a contributor module called messages. It's a separate ecosystem, which is like a push notification that you can send to the people inside the admin screen. Like inside the admin, you can send a, like how banks send sometimes like statements. You can go and read the inbox in the bank app. So same way we have an inbox and we have a notification. We just push it to people, admin saying, okay, there is a, like a 20% discount on all the product, all the places, just make the call. So there are these different roles. Some of them are lead generators, or some of them like they just call people and ask them if you wanted to, get a new products and things like that. So they're like a different, set of roles and people are in there. And the IAM, and again, Drupal IAM system, like identity access management. So we have a, as I mentioned, like a 15 different roles, means like you need to give permission to a specific part of the application, not they shouldn't have access to certain things, they shouldn't have. So we have a massive IAM system. Again, there's a module we contributed for that one. I will explain what we did there. And then there's an analytics system. We have a front-end React. As I said, like everything is a front-end React Next.js apps. And then we purely use JSON API for most of our activities. There are some legacy APIs that we couldn't change the agreement with the legacy system. So for those, we went with the REST resources. But most of our customer-facing applications are just out-of-box JSON API. And then there are, there is a reporting system, which basically are tons of data we need to export. And again, the system is kind of a legacy. They expect the whole data set, like you can't give a delta every night. So we need to export all these 15 million users data every night, and then we just send it to as a CSV file or like a flat file. We just send it to them, and then they process it, and the rest of the organization use this data from that external, that data system.
And you use these data export.
Sorry?
You use these data exports.
Exactly. Hey, you got it. Okay. So the implementation, as you would imagine, this is like a massive, most of the things that I explained today are like probably I would say 20-30% of the whole system. And the main factors based on what we saw, I believe these are all the main candidates that made this system to work the way it works, right? First one is custom entities. So we use custom entities like anything. The only entity, like a core provided entity that we use is a node, but not the reason you think of. So there is a tool tips that I have in the end of this session. Probably we have 10 nodes, right? We use node as a configuration. Just let that sink in. Using a node as a configuration. And then we use a lot of custom fields. So anytime we think something need to be done a little bit different, or like a requirement wise, it's coming as like, oh, we wanted to have this particular thing, but we don't want to create a separate module or something. For example, I can give you one example. The submission form I was talking about before? They said they want, some of the organization, they want to ask for additional details, right? For example, one of the organization, they have some form of membership ID in the organization level, and they want to accept that as well, only for that organization, right? So now question is, okay, how do I do that? Because on an organization level, I need to say this form on top of the main details that you ask, username, like an email, their address or whatever, you need to ask this membership ID as well, right? So we were looking at some of the modules, we were checking like a field collection and all these other things, and then like how do we define that? Because that field would change on each organization level. So when we first introduced, it was for one organization, and then they're like, while implementing, they said, oh, there's another organization, they want to accept something else. Like they wanted to add this PIN number they provide, like as a verification. So it's almost like the organization gives them a unique coupon to go and redeem, and then we generate a coupon for them. You know what I mean? Like, because they don't have a proper system to distribute or whatever. So we decided to build a custom field, and the custom field has like a 4 or 5 fields in it, right? Each custom field. And in there, you just say, what is the title value, field title, field type? Is it a number, numeric? What kind of validation we need to do there on that field, right? And then what the error message should be. All this information we collect as a one field, right? So now, while in the middle of implementing, they say like, oh, we may want to collect more than one field. It can't be just one field. Like we may need to have like 3 fields, maximum 3 fields, additional custom fields. So we made that as a multi-cardinality. All the configuration of the individual field definition, we store as a single value, JSON value. We just take the configuration value like a title and then validation type, all this information, we compress as a JSON object, put it in the field as a field value, right? And that's a one single field, right? One single field has all this information. When the organization specific request comes, asking for, give me the form data, I need to, like the front end first asking, like I need to build the form, give me all the form details. We pull that metadata, we send it to them. We just send them, okay, there is like 3 custom fields coming in. One of the field title is this, the type is this, and the field name ID is this. And when they submit the form, we take the ID value and we save that information separately in a data table. Do you guys familiar with the user data table in Core? So users data table, yeah? So like in D8, they created a separate table called
user field.
No, so users field data and users are just entity specific. Yeah. But there is a users data table, maybe you can check it in tonight, where you can basically save key values. So anything related to users, I do remember this was in D7 as a data field. There's a massive data field, like you just shove in everything. Anything in the user object, you just add user foo equal to bar. That when you save the entity, it looks at that field. If it is a separate field, it saves in there. If there's no field, it just put it in the data. Or you can just put it, save it in the data. And D8, when they did, they created as a separate service. So you call the user service and you just put a key and the value, and you can specify module name or something like that, and then you can access it. So we created a similar data table to store that custom field value. So you ask for, okay, this customer, give me the field value. It just provides a field. And then obviously you can add views, plugins, everything on top of it so that you can export that value in the reporting as well, if they wanted to see those reports.
How do you add validation?
So validation, again, this is a plugin system. I will take another session if you are really interested in that custom field, because it's a big piece. So it is a plugin. We implemented custom field as a plugin. So I can implement like a 4 different type of plugin. One is like a numeric, alphanumeric, and the field type, right? And then when you add that field, you load the whole plugin and you pass the data, and inside the plugin we have a validation method, and that validation method throws like saying false. Then you take the error message that you got it saved in the thing saying this is not a valid phone number. Like obviously we won't able to say, this need to be alphanumeric, you are providing alpha, and they don't want to be that specific. They want to say your PIN number is invalid. Like they didn't ask for a specific detail. They don't want to give specific detail because this information they're expecting the customer already has. And it also prevents a lot of spamming, like, someone coming in the organization page, like they found the organization form somewhere and they're trying to spam the system, it just stops them, doing submissions. And then JSON API resources, again, this is a contributed module. I don't know if you guys know this one. So JSON API resources is a contrib module, and all the JSON API I was talking about, the APIs are built using the JSON API resources. I have some slide explaining that. And then there's a custom API authentication. We can go actually one at a time. So hopefully you guys are familiar with the custom entity types, how you normally define. So basically, this is how you define a, like an entity type. You specify ID label, and then there is a kind of a gold mine module called entity, and still I can't understand why it's not part of core. So there is a contrib module called entity, which provides additional capabilities on top of what core provides on the entity API. So we use some of those somewhere here. So like you can see, this is a Drupal entity routing. That's actually part of the entity module. It provides all the routing information. And so here, like we have some of them, but you can define so many things like your permissions, like do you want to have the permission on a bundle level and all these things. If you provide some of these details, the entity module automatically generate those bundle level permissions and all the good things that you normally get with the CCK module or like our D7 when we do like a bundle permissions or things like that. So the entity module does all those things. You can define the forms as well. You can define your permission provider. You can provide views data. And this is what I was talking about. You can, like when you want to integrate your, so if you are using a field type that's already provided by core, you don't have to provide any views data. But if you are defining a custom field type, then you need to add views data. I mean, like you need to provide a views data permission. I believe, and also you wanted to add some kind of a relationship or something like that in the custom field, then you can add a views data. Yeah, this is basically the definition of entities. And another part of this definition is, where did I go? Okay. Okay, I put it in a wrong direction, but we can go back. So this is the, nope, that's not it. So just to point out, another kind of advantage of defining your custom entities is you can chain load all these things so nicely. For me, this is like a heaven. You know what I mean? Like instead of trying to say submission and then try to access a property which is not auto-completing, and it's just so hard to know where you're making mistakes. So this one, when I say submission, give me the organization, so submission/customer, give me the organization of customer. It gives me an entity, organization entity. And then organization, give me the offer. So remember I was telling like there can be multiple offers. Then if I call an offer, it gives me the offer that's applicable to that customer. So that customer might have 3 offers, and this is the top one applicable to that person. So if I say give offers, it give all possible offers for that customer. But if I ask for offer, it just do the calculation. And in a way, like probably you guys might be using a question mark just to make sure if there is no offer, if there is no such thing. In our system, most of the cases, there's no way you can't have an organization for customer. You can't have an offer in an organization. You can't have an add-ons for an offer. So again, this is a global configuration we have. And if your organization missing an offer, then the global offer kicks in, right? And then it basically handle the fallback of the offer because there's no offer configured for the customer. And when the global offer gets called, we get a notification saying, okay, this organization, there's no offer for this customer. And the internal notification thing I was talking about, so it just tells you, you need to either go and configure it or it's keep using the global offer. And usually the global offer probably less value compared to the market, the organization specific offer. It's not like you won't get any offer, so global probably flat 5% or something like that, but your organization get like a 15%, Okay, and then this is the custom field definition. So again, there are other elements like the annotations and things that you saw on the top, but the main part is just you create a property definition. So this is a one field. So I'm creating a field called notes, say, and this is another requirement, same like a custom field. Every time they load a submission, admin person load a submission, and say the person called, like customer called and asked like, oh, like I don't have this information or I can't redeem my offer, for example, then the person who takes the call, they can add a note. They can say, oh, the customer called at this time, or the customer called and they said this. So at that time, we wanted to capture who the person taking that call and what time they are taking the call and what the notes they wanted to add on the customer entity itself, right? Now, you don't want to give a field to someone to add the username because they already logged in, and you don't want to ask them what time you did because you know the timestamp when they're adding the note. So you just provide the note field. Behind the scene, when they type and save the customer, you add the timestamp, you add the author information based on the current logged in user. So next time someone load the same submission, they would see a history. We call it as a, like a agent history, and they can see all the different times the customer called or like agents visited this page and they added some notes explaining what happened. All right. So now imagine like maybe we would say, okay, maybe you could use a comment module for this. Like you could add a comment functionality to the customer entity and you can have a comment, but then comment has its own thing going on, like you can spam, you can add a thing, you can thread the comment and all these other things. Like, do we really need to have all those things? Like, is it cleaner, like nicer and full control if we could create a custom field and we can use it?
It's also another entity or series of entities.
So this is a field.
This is a field.
Yeah, it's a multi-field field, like basically a field with multiple values. And when you create this, it automatically, so like if this field is a single cardinality and you attach it to an entity, it would create a column, 3 columns on the main table. So if I attached this to submission, it would say submission underscore notes, submission underscore time, submission underscore author. But if I put this field in the main entity as a multi-cardinality, then it might create another table like submission underscore notes table with the delta and all these other things. So again, you're looking at 2 tables max. Then, if you imagine you're adding this using a field UI and you're creating 3 different fields, one for notes, one.
I've got a question I've been trying to ask. Well, yeah, for the moment, perhaps now it is. Do you use managed field UI at all, or is everything based field definitions and custom fields?
We use it on the node, which is a configuration. Okay. JSON API resources, again, this is like how do we create the submissions? Like you have attributes 1, attribute 2. Probably I should put the custom fields here just to explain what that, like a metadata would look like. So this is how they send that information. So anytime they submit this. Again, it's JSON API itself, like the core module provides individual entities, individual items to create. Like here we are creating a submission entity, but we are not using the core JSON API create option. We are using our custom endpoint using JSON API resources so that we can ask for a certain details in a certain way, and we process it. We extend the JSON resources module to add the validation and how we update. You remember I was saying, like if someone came 2 years ago, they're coming back, we don't want to create a new resources, we just load the resource. All those business logic happens in the extended service that we introduced. And it's much cleaner compared to all the other things that you need to go through. Okay, this is fun. Custom authentication. I don't know if you guys have done this, but like usually my go-to move is simple OAuth module or something on that line, or use like a basic authentication or something like out of box available, right? But then you kind of need to think like what are the things happening inside, like you're asking for a handshake, you're asking for a secret, and then you're keeping that for a while, and then you're asking again. All those things takes time, right? Like a performance wise, if you look at it, it's just like a lot of effort, right? So some of the APIs that we expose are public APIs, like in the sense like you don't need to authenticate, you don't need to do anything. But then some of them are customer, like the offer page I was talking about, that's unique to that customer, so you don't want to be public, right? So how do we do the authentication? So again, Drupal 8 upwards made the authentication so much nicer, so much simpler. So you can extend that authentication provider, like you can implement the authentication provider interface, and you can use your, so there is an applies method which says like whether that authentication should be applied to a particular, like a request or not. So you could go with the path approach, you can go with the header approach, you can decide where the authentication should be applied, and then you just add, you just say whether that particular request is authenticated or not, right? So now imagine, instead of saying, and that comes to nicely to the second point, how do we expose these APIs? Even though it's anonymous, users can consume this API, do we really want to give that permission to anonymous role in our system, right? Yes, maybe we can give, but do we have to? Like in the sense, can someone come and hit this endpoint from a browser? Like, is that okay? Ideally, it's not going to harm anyone. Like if someone hits a post API or a get API on the browser, it may not harm anyone, but why would we allow it? Like, why do we need to do it, right? And our initial kind of thing was anonymous user role wouldn't have any permission. Like no matter what, they won't able to access anything, right? So what we did was we created an authentication service, and we look for certain headers on the request, right? And these headers could be publicly exposed. It could be a JSON, content type should be JSON endpoint, or a particular, like a content type or accept type, or it could be a secret hash or a key that you provide as an X token, X API token, and you just communicate with the front-end providers. And most of the front-end we are using Next.js, they have a server-side call. So instead of making that as a client-side where it is exposed, they can make that call server-side, and they can pass that token to us. With that token, we know it is coming from API. When it comes from API, we load an API user, which is basically a dummy user that we created, and we log in that API request as authenticated as a dummy user. So this way, we control the permissions, like roles of that user. We control the front-end application permission. So all the front-end, and again, when we started one user, and then once the front-end started creating multiple front-end apps, we created multiple API users. Now, each front-end, we can control the permissions based on what capability that application should have, right? The main application that we build, they have all the APIs, but then some of the other application, they build on the front end, they need to have like a 2-3 APIs. Then we have a user who has a permission, and this is work pretty nicely because you're using the Drupal's user system, you're using the permissions, you're using the roles that the Drupal outer box provides. And yeah.
I have a question. So you're not using something like OAuth or something like that. Is it, so the question would be how do you issue tokens? Do you refresh tokens?
So the tokens are mainly the user specific. Like there are two things. One is the anonymous traffic, like anonymous APIs that we don't necessarily care if anyone hits. For those, we have a static token that we generate and we give them on periodically. For authenticated users, I think I have a slide for authenticated. Basically, we generate a token very similar to our forgot password token. I don't know if you noticed on forgot password, we attach a timestamp and then we put a hash key which is generated based on our private salt that we have in our system. There's a hash algorithm that we use to generate that information. So whenever we receive the token, we extract the timestamp to check if it is expired or not. And then the hash value, we try to generate the same value again, and there is a hash equal method we can call. I think, yeah, I have a slide for that. That compares the hash to make sure it's that user. So we use that as an authentication method. And then once it's authenticated, we put that in the, when they do the request, we put that in the request header. So every time the authenticated APIs, the API specific to user, we check for the token. If the token doesn't exist, then they won't able to get into the pages. So technically, they are not authenticated users. Right. And technically, they are authenticated users, if it makes sense. So they are not authenticated users in a way, they don't have a personal information. The details that we are receiving is not specific to them because they are not a user. Individual submission is not a user entry in our system. They are authenticated because the API user is an authenticated traffic, right? Yeah. So every API received from one front-end application is an authenticated request in our system. So that way, it is kind of, it's almost like you're just authenticated at the server side at the moment when you need to be. And then, yeah, and then you get the data. Okay, now, so this is the token generation versus validation bit you just asked. So when you need to compute a token, you just provide some seed value, which is again, Drupal has a seed, like an individual seed you can generate, again string, and then you provide the value, and it just does this base 64 with the value and the seed, the private key and the hash from your settings file, and it generates the key and give it to you. You give that key to the user, and when they come back, you take the value of the user and you try to generate the same key, right, with the data value they are providing, and you compare those two keys, whether they both match or not. This way you know, like, that's a unique user. That's one I send the token, though they are the valid one. Okay. Finally, performance metrics. Like I said, this is not like accurate. It's just kind of close to accurate. So, so we have about like we did like 100 concurrent threads for like a 10 minutes, and had like a 7,500 requests per minute on the system, like a last run, and the average response time like in milliseconds, 500 milliseconds for each API. And again, post requests are a little bit higher than the get requests. I think our get requests are less than 150 milliseconds, and then the total number of like a 22,000 requests in, like in 10 minutes time. And yeah, this is something we have to run once a quarter, and we get some data. Okay, this is a kind of a fun bit. So use that export. So this is like main modules that we kind of benefit from the contrib space. So we have a JSON API resources, and yeah, easy breadcrumb. I don't know if you have seen that one. That's again big one. Like easy breadcrumb is like it adds the page title to the breadcrumb, and like we use a lot of them. So the whole admin section, I could do another presentation like how we manage. Again, it's very slick. I feel like we have like a different 15 roles, and we have their individual roles. They have their own dashboard type thing, and they see only certain menus. And things like that. And then the easy email, I don't know if you guys heard this one, this email system where you can basically build, like a Drupal provides a template type thing on the site information or basic information side where you can have the email. This is like you can have your own email type, and you can have the body of the email content somewhere. And every time you need to alter the email or something, you can go and change it. It's an entity. And then when you send an email, it creates a content entity. It's almost like an email log. It sends the email and it keeps that entity in the system. So now, best use case, remember every browser we have like a view in browser link on the email. Whenever they click the link, you can just render this log file, right? And it basically renders your whole email in the browser. So it's pretty cool. And also we attach these email entities into the submission. So like I said, remember if someone from the support logs in and they're like, customer says, oh, I didn't receive any email, I submitted this like blah, blah, blah. Then they go and look at the submission. They're like, okay, you created this submission this time, and then there's a tab called emails. If you go there, you can see the customer, like receive the emails that sent for that customer. So at that time, either they say, okay, probably you didn't receive it, I can continue the process and I can do it. Like the support can help them pass through. So we attach this one with the submission as well. And then HTTP Client Manager, again, another slick module. Like if you have a lot of HTTP requests that you're sending, you can use this one on top of our Guzzle HTTP client. And it just provides like you can provide the definitions and things like that in the YAML file, and like all the API definition in the YAML file. And yeah, it's just so easy to manage any API. So again, the things that we saw are APIs that we provide, but then we also consume a lot of third-party APIs. So those APIs we use the client manager. We use data export, again, the data, all the data generated using the CSV file. So mostly we use the views for all the data generations. Like the custom entities all of them have views plugin. We export every single field like custom fields or a core fields, and then we export them using the using the views data export.
How did you say 15 million rows?
Yeah, something like that.
Interesting.
And these are all some of the modules that we created as part of this project. And like I would say probably 3 of them my babies in a way, like something I hold dearly. Probably I will show this one what it does. I'm pretty sure you guys gonna say, there is already a module for that, why did you create that one? So this is a entity reference view, and I was quite surprised that nobody had this requirement, nobody had this problem. Imagine you are referencing some entity and you need to see more than just title. How many times we had that problem? Or someone put the same title twice, right? And you want to see a little bit more, right? So the entity reference view allows you to create a view that you can show under the reference field. So this thing that you see here, this is actually a view. So,
a view?
Yes.
That's not what I thought that would be, okay.
So this is a view. So you can say, I wanted to attach, and it is a widget, field widget. We created an entity field widget. And then as a configuration, you put
listing all the values?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
So like for example, I wanted to have a content type and I wanted to provide list of editors. So I have 2 Emmas in our office. So I need to know which Emma I am choosing here. So you just enter Emma and then your picture comes, email comes, all these details you can see as a content editor. So it makes it much easier than just the name that you see in the reference field, right? Same thing like, you can add that one. So that's the entity reference field. So code spool is a, remember I was talking about the coupon that we generate from the third-party system. So sometimes we have a problem where we couldn't generate the coupons, or the system is down. So those cases they provide a CSV file to upload the coupons to individual places. So for those we use this coupon code spool module, which basically you upload a CSV file, it goes and creates a table and saves all this, and then anytime you ask, give me a token, give me a coupon, it just goes and fetches one of these and set the status as redeemed. So that means next time it gets the other one. So it's almost like a fallback scenario on a high traffic where the third party is down, and yeah, you have to serve some coupons, like you don't want to lose the customer. So this is one of the module that we use there. And this one, again, you might say there is a module for that, but apparently that didn't work really well. So we implemented this one. It's called inline translation. So we have just two languages. People need to go to the translation tab and then French, English, and all these things, and they just find it really complicated. So we build this one so you can go, oh, it does something. It's a GIF file. I did not know that. See, sometimes I have more time to do stuff. I end up creative. So yeah, you can go to different tabs, and it's the same field on two languages, and you can just edit them in the same.
That's really nice.
Yeah, same.
I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
You get around each, you enable it per field or something.
I think it's based on the fields that you have a translation enabled in the content translation configuration. So if you have that field translatable, it automatically comes.
And you get the tab around each.
Yeah, each field separately, yeah. I mean, like there was a JavaScript file that we wrote. Every time you click French, everyone goes to French. But then that was about 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock night. So then I was like, okay, this is not worth it. And that's it. And this is the one I was talking about, the permission group module. So because we have a different, like a large amount of customer roles, and we have different functionalities for each roles, it is so hard to just work with the just roles and permissions, because like each part introducing 5 permissions, for example, right? Then I need to make sure this massive long list of roles and the permissions need to align, and I don't want to give more. So the permission group something in between, sits in between your permission and roles, where you can say for this particular functionality, right? Let's say I wanted to manage organization. So edit organization and create organization, these permissions, and then view organization report. These are part of organization editor permission group, right? And then you assign the group to the role instead of assigning individual permission to the role. And this module, again, you can see Alex wrote this module. It's so clever. It doesn't do crazy everything custom. It uses same course permission system, but when you call the group, which is a config entity, we attach all the permission under it. So it basically checks those permissions, loop those permissions as access check, rather than individual permission. So it's almost like a wrapper that helps you, well, for like a big projects, you can manage this permission. Another nice thing about this one is, as a developer working on an individual component or individual part of the application, I don't really know which role this particular application is going to be used or accessed. And most of the time, any project that you work on, the permission and role thing is always an afterthought. You go to the live and someone, like, it worked perfectly fine because you are always user 1, and then someone logs in and like, oh, this is not working, oh, okay, let me go and save the permission. You save the permission on prod, and then you forgot to export it, and then next time you do the deployment, oh, this is happening again, you know what I mean? So this one helps, like you just say, okay, create 3 permission groups, one for editor role of this application XYZ, one for admin role, one for viewer role, and they create the permission group as part of the delivery. And then at the end, when you go to the production or when you're working on the staging environment, you just speak with your product owners and check who should, in the roles of our system, who or all should have this particular permission, and they do that on stage, and you export it and put it in the system. So this way it's a little bit closer to getting those things in place. And the next one, solutions. Node as a config form. What did I say? Okay, so again, this is something, I don't know if you guys faced this before. A lot of time you need to create a configuration that asks a little bit more than just a text field. Like they wanted to upload an image, then you create a file field, and then you just save the file. And then you wanted like a WYSIWYG editor field where we wanted to have multiple things. Now, because the configuration is like so many of them, entity reference field, what do you do? Like I have media file, I need to reference that field. So okay, you create an entity reference field. So again, you're creating all these different configuration form fields in your system, but you're putting so much effort to produce them. I don't know if you have ever tried to save a WYSIWYG editor text area field. You need to have a format, you need to have all these things saved in a configuration, and then you need to load them because you wanted to show them differently when you load the form, and then there is a raw data and all these things. So in this project, we had to create such configuration. So what we did was we created a node type, and we created a bunch of default content entities where we export the configuration, right? And this is something, again, I was looking around and I think I found this one from somewhere else, but I created a Stack Overflow just in case if anyone wants to see this one or what happens. So yeah, this is something you can create. You can create a node and you can put node UUID on the URL. And when you try to access like the default value, you create this is basically a configuration URL, right? You just access with just settings. You don't have to enter the node details. If you go to admin config system banner settings, it automatically uses this node UUID value and it loads the node in that URL.
Are you saying that that's all you need? You
Yes.
don't need any other code to make this work?
Yeah.
That's very neat.
Exactly.
Because there is a module for doing this. I can't remember offhand what it's called, entity form, entity config.
Right.
It's a module which defines a custom entity type that is designed that you can create different
path
pages
okay.
and all the rest of it. But that's very simple.
Yeah, so this is basically using our node. So that means you can have any number of fields using the field UI. You can add a custom field, you can add a reference field, you can have a widgets, everything already built in, right? The only downside I would say is actually there are two upsides. One is when you import configurations and things like that, this is not going to be affected, and that's one of the requirement. Like they don't want this to be changed once after it goes live, unless they have a massive restructuring or something coming up. And the way we use is we use the default config module, so it's a default content module. We export this as a JSON file in our system, and anytime we have the changes, we import them. Otherwise, we don't import them. And most of the cases, like I said, it's been like more than 5 years. Like we never had to import any of these things once it went live, right? So they manage all the content. So yeah, that's the one thing you need to be a little bit careful. Like yeah, it's not a config, it's not saved in config that you can just edit and upload. If your requirement is like that, then probably it might not work. But otherwise, it just works perfectly fine. So it, like, yeah, you just put this one and you pass the default node ID as a, you can pass a node ID, but here I went a little bit like because UUID is part of the default content. So I know for sure that's not going to change, whereas the node ID would change when at the time of import it would be 5 and then it changes to something else.
Presumably that's just the default. So presumably I could go to that URL and put a different UUID in at the time of running it, and it would load and edit that node, right?
Oh my God, I think so.
Sure, you haven't got a security hole on that one, potentially.
You think?
Well, it depends what the other nodes are.
Yeah, but again,
do you do a test of the bundle of the node? Well, you don't use nodes, but
yeah,
that could allow someone to access a node of a different unexpected bundle, for example.
100%.
I'm sure you're fine. We don't have
to
focus on that.
Like it's admin access anyway. You need to have admin site banner access,
Yeah.
but I do see what you're saying. Yeah, it could be
Don't worry about it.
something to think about. Okay, this is another one. Again, as a developers, how many times again, this is kind of applicable to the permission group we were talking about. Like every time you launch something, someone sees something else, you see something else, they say like, oh, for my role it's not working. Can you log in as me and check this? So there's a module called Masquerade in the system where you can just go on role, get the username, and you can masquerade as them, right? But now we have like 15 different roles that I need to worry about, or like 20 different roles I need to worry about. So how about we create a block where each role you create as a separate masquerade? Like it's a kind of a quick link. You just say, okay, let's masquerade as a site admin, let's masquerade as a content editor to see how content editor would look like. So how do we do that? Like I don't want to use another user, or I don't like the only way we can do that is you need to have a user entity, right, with that particular role. But I don't want to, like, how do you export those users? So you can use update hook, you can use a default content, you export all these things, or voila, create a block, right? Put a user details, again, this is any system it works. Actually, I was going to create a contrib module for this one, but then I was like, okay, kind of feels like silly, but you guys tell me if it's worth creating one. So it fetches all the roles in the system. Like first, probably I should show this one. So get masquerade users, it goes and fetches all the roles in the system, and it adds masquerade underscore and the role name, and then it takes that user ID, right? So masquerade underscore your role name become a user ID, right? That's all it does. The next one, when you say get user, it try to load the user by that name. So now you don't have that user in the system right now, right? Masquerade underscore admin is not a thing. Then it goes and create that user automatically with some dummy details, assign the role that you've specified, replace that masquerade with the role name, and then it just goes back. So this way, you just create that users, check the access. The masquerade access is again something that you normally check based on the role. So this access check is for that particular role if they have access to become masquerade or not. Okay, so as admin user, you should able to see that role. Then you can basically have that block that I was showing before. So this would be, you just click one click, you become a content editor, and you just edit the pages, you just see what are the things that you wanted to see. And then you just unmasquerade and then come out as an admin, and then you go back and masquerade as a different.
Delete the user and you unmasquerade, or is it there in the...
No, this is, once the user created, it's already there. And then next time when you try to load that user, it's already there. Like you won't create again, and it won't delete any users. I mean, as a part of this module, uninstall hook, probably you wanted to delete those users, but you just want to create them. And if you introduce a new role, for example, and you don't have to worry about updating this, it automatically creates that role specific user, and you would be able to masquerade.
What if the user has multiple roles?
That's a good one. So this module doesn't provide that, but then if we create a contrib module, probably we will give an admin UI where you can go and create additional users that you wanted to list here with the multiple roles. Or you can have you create a user separately, you come back and add the users here. So either individual role specific users would be there and check boxes, and you can uncheck if you don't want them, and then you create a role user with more than one role, and you can add it to the list and it displays in the block. Yeah, I was thinking that one as well.
I guess for your project, they only ever have one role, so it's fine.
Yeah, most of them, there are people who has more roles, but the way we control is like, say for example, you have a super user, you have capabilities of a support user and site admin. So your permission would have everything. So in that sense, if I need to see support users and site admin, I just masquerade as a super user because I know super user has both of those. You know what I mean? So our roles are like kind of a hierarchy. Like there's a small set and then the bigger set which contains a small set. And then, like there's no two different sets as it,
There was Alex Potts on the team with you that worked on this then?
Yeah, in this project, yeah, I was part of. I think that's pretty much it. I don't know how I did with the time, but I had a lot of fun.
You've had just over an hour.
Oh, wow, okay.
Well, actually, we had a few minutes of intro, so basically an hour, which is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I think what we say is we'll have a 5-minute break if anybody wants refreshments or go to the loo.
So Vijay, is this the first time you've given this presentation?
Yes. Yes, I proposed the same topic for the Drupal Camp England. Drupal Camp England, and then they didn't get selected. So I kind of prepared for that. So I was like, okay, maybe I will do it somewhere else. So yeah.
You used Drupal more like a framework, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why did you use Drupal if you used it more like a framework?
I think it was like, again, it's a kind of a decision that they took, but it kind of solves a lot of problem if you look at it. Like if you look at all the things that it does, I would say it's the best part of like a best or what Drupal can do best, like managing structural content, like a complex structural content, managing access, like identity access management. I think Drupal is so good on those things. And in terms of rendering pages, in terms of rendering complex structures and things like that, yes, Drupal can do it, but then the front-end apps can perform much faster for those things. And also the data storage aspect of it, like we were talking about views data, export modules being used to generate these things. Now imagine you need to build something similar to that as a custom solution. If you go outside of Drupal, like I don't think there is anything out there unless there's commercial product, probably Oracle or Microsoft, where they might have something, but as a build open source product, I don't think anything out there that could do what Drupal can do out of box.
So let's say if you went with Symfony, or I can't remember what the other PHP one's more lightweight, Laravel, and then thanks.
Yeah.
If you went with either of those, for example, you'd be doing a lot more work essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think at least to some extent we need to build, like a migration, for example, because our old site was in Drupal 7, so the migration was quite straightforward. I think we migrated probably, I would say 20-25% of the data that we have right now from the previous site.
So you got the migrated API ready to
Yeah,
go as well.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the initial requirement. We couldn't go without the existing data because it has so much submission information in it.
Was there anything then, if you use it like a framework, that at any point in the project, did anyone ever say, like, oh, we're kind of fighting against Drupal as a framework here in terms of like limitations, like maybe if we had done this using some JavaScript framework that we would have got better in this area than Drupal does, but actually overall Drupal still does better job, but in this situation some other framework might have done a better job at this particular thing or anything like that?
Not necessarily for the content aspect. Like, so for example, about 6 months ago we started doing some of the stuff. Again, I didn't speak about how we render the coupon from the system. There is another separate system that we render the coupon from. That part used to be in Drupal, and now we are building a separate kind of a next app that takes care of it. It has some DB as well, and it just takes care of pulling, and we are using that system as a third-party system rather than a Drupal, and we are using a module called external entity reference or external entity module, which basically an entity reference that you can reference from external system outside of Drupal. And yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's just basically API, and it renders the external data. But as far as what it does, like for example, front-end, we are already using the separate framework for front-end. For a large amount of data, yes, we have the data, but most of our data are like kind of a maximum like a 6 years or something persistent, and after that we would able to purge those data because it's all stored in the separate data store. So in a way, we are using Drupal the way we wanted to for the system point of view, and it is managed by different roles, like a different admin users and roles, which again, there's another part where we have a single sign-on and all these things set up based on the organization login. So basically, any one part of the organization, like Apple, I was explaining, they could log in without the username password for our portal because it's all integrated into their single sign-on system, and they would able to access it. So it's much more, makes much more sense as a whole, as a platform, and they get a training. We have a separate section for training materials and like a help and support and all these things in the backend side. When they first log in, they can see like a tour type thing where like a video explanation, like how to use it, what to do. So yeah, yeah, I think for a front end, we kind of curved the customer facing aspect already out of Drupal, which is helping more with the performance caching and the data level, API level caching, much better. But and the backend data, like a large part of the backend system is already external systems. In a way, it's very slim. What it does, yeah.
Nice. Thanks.
Cheers. Okay, I think Paul, you're up. I think.
One more. You did the load testing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was you'd say that was maybe because the data got larger. If you had used say something like GraphQL or something, and I'm not sure your name, but I'd used
James.
James, sorry.
Oh,
James,
sorry.
you gave me the kind of thought of if you you weren't requesting all of the entity data and you were only requesting the things you needed, say using GraphQL or whatnot, and specifying fields maybe, do you think that that might have helped in that scenario, or?
100% if we didn't go with the JSON resources approach. So the Drupal core JSON API exposes individual entities and then the related entities that you want that are associated with that one. And there is no easy way you can make one call. I think there is a sub request module. I think I heard someone was saying like you can make multiple requests in one main request. But yeah, nested, yeah, get all the relationship specific APIs in the main API. You can request them as well. But we went with the JSON API resources, which is basically tailor-made, almost like a GraphQL, but lighter. So it's a tailor-made, all the data, yes, the customer or organization, they have a lot of data, but we don't send all of them. We send only specific ones, and there's we kind of have our own framework on top of the JSON resources where we just say there is an explicit list of fields that you can allow in the request, explicitly you can allow in the response. So if you send anything additional, you get a error on the request. If you send additional in response, we filter it out and we just send only the one that you need. Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Paul McCrodden. I'm going to just do about 10 minutes or so on a preview for hopefully the presentation I give here in full on another occasion. I did give this talk at Drupal Camp England recently, 1st of March. Yeah, now it's April near the end. But I have modified it since, so I'm always working on it. Just briefly about myself, I'm a product manager, and I like working in the tech for good space. I'm a Shiva yoga instructor. I'm certified in permaculture, so I have some diverse interests, I guess. And then tech career, I was a developer at one point in my life. Started in Java and C++. Moved into Drupal and then in HR. So that's how I got into product. Moved into HR and then worked in the climate space and then did a full loop back around PM of a Drupal web platform working for the University of Cambridge. Permaculture is permanent culture now is the way people like to talk about it. So it's like developing closed loop systems, mostly in the kind of agriculture context, but even in your life, some people apply it to lifestyle and having kind of like sustainable agriculture is what it originally came from. Yeah, so that's why the photo of myself and my son from when I lived in Japan growing some food. But anyway, I won't be going into everything now because we're going to do this in a few minutes, but that was the agenda for the talk. If I give it here again, basically looking at why this talk, why are we talking about product management in the context of Drupal at all, what product management means in relation to Drupal, what makes a good product manager, some resources that I won't show today, keep it for another time, and then just looking at like what a future of product management might be. The outcome of this talk when I give it is just asking about product mindset, and is that kind of the way we're working? Is it useful for like the digital products that we're working with and that we're building in Drupal or otherwise? And who is responsible for product strategy, and like what is product strategy? Like usually it's used in our decision making process, what we say yes or no to, and what we develop. So basically the idea is a manager might be looking at it, the team might be looking at it, a full or fractional product manager. So then some of questions, I mentioned some already. What is a product in general? What is a product manager? What is product thinking, and is it missing in Drupal? So a product is really anything that we're developing for users that bring users value. So pretty much everything we are working with in Drupal is going to be a product, and a product manager is really a bridge between the business and the tech and the user, like a kind of a middle person in helping to guide the product to serving the users really. So product thinking, I guess, is an approach around like what to build, what not to build. I'd probably simplify it to that. Then I usually ask, do you even need a product manager at all? And the reason for this talk, I guess, in general, is because I've been a Drupal developer and have been in teams where there's no product manager, and sometimes I feel that it's lacking. Hence the need for the talk and the ask, do we need one at all? Sometimes we don't. Is the answer as well. But when we don't, usually there needs to be someone that's in a strategic role like that, somebody that understands the market, understands how to work with the various cross-functional stakeholders. You know, as developers, some of us are better at that cross-functional stuff than others. Some developers are just like genius coders, not as good communicators. You know, we're all different people and different skill sets. But I believe that if you're on a team of developers, that you do need somebody in that kind of cross-functional role to make the product successful. Maybe it's not a product manager. So yeah, it can be engineers. It could be the designer. Maybe the designer's doing some of this stuff. Maybe it's a customer success manager. Maybe it's the founder of what you're building. The problem with that is do those people have time? They have their own jobs to be doing. They're designers. They want to design. They're engineers. They want to engineer and develop, you know, good code, make good solutions. So yeah, that's the idea, is having someone dedicated. That's their job, so they have time for that thing. They're not like, you know, doing it on the side, and they don't have this kind of conflict of interest. If I'm an engineer, I'm usually going to make decisions that are kind of prioritizing engineering sanity rather than like the whole bigger picture. And same with design. But you'll make design, if the designer's making those decisions, they're going to lean towards, oh, I like the way this looks or feels, so I'm going to do that regardless of other things. So yeah, we want to avoid this because I said so. It's important, kind of feeling, or like because we promised it to the client. I'm sure we've all heard of that one. We promised this, so we have to do it. But like, why did we promise that kind of thing? Is it because we were too busy and we just said yes, so we wanted to get back to the coding that we were doing, or, you know, that kind of thing? So having a product manager can sometimes help prevent those things if they're doing their job in the right way. So yeah, it's a hard job in the teams that need it, but someone's got to do it. These are just some kind of tongue-in-cheek characters that I've kind of generated. There's 3 character personas that I've identified as being skill sets that make a good product manager. You know, they're guiding. The dude is a kind of just a funny one that I don't think I'll present it today. And then there's a myth buster one. I'll just go into the guide, I think, and then the myth buster today. The guide, I have had like a SaaS product, say a founder coming to myself looking for what they thought was a developer to develop is in Drupal. It's a SaaS product looking to develop some things that they had on this roadmap, but they actually were lacking their strategy. There was no real plan of why they were doing anything. It was just some little things. Let's do this and let's do that, but they actually needed to really rethink their product and actually have a plan. So it was Mark Conroy that some people here, I think Vijay, you know Mark, yeah, they came to him and he was really like, no, you don't need a man, you need a plan kind of thing. Like, let's go back to the strategic board. So that's where he actually recommended me in that situation, because they need some product input, not just developing solutions in that case. So we see that where people don't really know what they need sometimes. So what is a plan then? And a plan is really the bottom tier here. We usually think of that in our like slices of a release that we release. It's the deliverables. But in order to have a plan, actually you need a lot of this other stuff to be correct first. So that's from an article by Saeed Khan. You can check it out there. If I'm not sure if we'll share these slides afterwards, but if you search product roadmaps versus product plans by Saeed Khan, you'll find it on Medium. So basically, he's created this kind of framework for, getting our ducks in a row kind of thing of making sure we create the right plans of what we actually want to deliver, because we might make this great solution and deliver it, but actually nobody needed it in the first place. It doesn't provide any value. So the product needs to provide value to the customers. So how do we figure out what's valuable? Well, you need to think of your business vision, your product vision, product objectives, and all these kind of things. The more that you have this rationalized and thought about, you're going to create a better deliverable and a better release for your product. So that's kind of the idea there. I'd go into more detail about that. One framework that I like using sometimes, especially when you're in a situation where you're dealing with stakeholders that want to know when you're delivering things and want hard deadlines, one thing that I think we can all use, be developers or not. So all of these kind of tools are useful regardless of if you've got the title product manager or not. If you're an engineer, I think you can still take some of these communication tools and thought product mindset stuff and use it. One of them is about communicating roadmaps. So if you're asked for things like 8 months down the line, when are you going to deliver that thing? Well, I can't give you the dates for that thing because I'm looking at the stuff that's now and need to figure that out first. So if you can group things in now, next, later buckets, I found that it's very useful for talking to clients and customers that want deadlines. You can say, now I can provide you in the next 2 weeks of that I'm working on these kind of detailed deliverables because I'm really in the weeds with these things and I understand them well. Next starts to get a little fuzzier because they're the things that are next. I'm not in the weeds with those things yet. So you can give a little less specifics there. And then later you can, 3-4 months and beyond, you can say, you've got to wait a little bit later for those things. But they are on the roadmap. So yeah, that's a framework that I think is useful. That's for like high level stuff, but when you're splitting releases, user story mapping, I think is really useful for engineers as a, maybe some of you know it. Does anyone know user story mapping or use it? Yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty common in the workplace. So your horizontal lines are your releases, like we saw in this slide here, product plans. You can split those into releases at the bottom. So these horizontals mark your releases. What's in your POC, proof of concept? Then next is your minimum viable product and whatnot. And then in your vertical columns, you've got your actions, your activities of like, maybe I'm finding an event, and you can, what way to slice up this release? It makes things way easier to know what you should work on in what order, prioritization and whatnot. The other character persona was the myth buster, and the reason I talk about a myth buster is because I think product management is a bit of science, but also there's an art to it, and there's a lot of kind of escape artist, risk mitigation. You don't want to deliver the wrong thing or and whatnot. So some of these things on this right-hand side are kind of biases or kind of thought patterns. And one of them I'll just talk about today, which you're probably all familiar with, is the sunk cost fallacy, which is one that I hear quite a lot and have done coming onto a Drupal team recently enough. People have built a lot of things and have invested a lot of time in things, or maybe they've you might be familiar with reducing the amount of WIP or amount of work in progress things so that we can actually deliver, because if we do more stuff in parallel, we're less likely to actually deliver the thing. So when you say you have a team that's done, like opened up loads of work in progress stuff and are just chugging along and not delivering, when you say, if you came in as a product manager or somebody who's kind of starting to take a bit more control and bring focus, you'll get a lot of this, but we've spent time on this thing. We don't want to pause that. We don't want to put it on the shelf. and you get a lot of pushback. But that's the sunk cost fallacy, this kind of idea of we've started it so we may as well finish it. But actually, if you look at what's valuable now in terms of delivering a POC or delivering an MVP, that's not the thing you should be doing. That's way down later or something like that. So put it on the shelf, let it go stale. It's just not important at the moment. So I think that these kind of things are useful for somebody, regardless of if they have a title product manager or not, to be keeping an eye out for and reducing the whip and whatnot. Yeah, so that is a kind of very whistle-stop tour of the product management talk. Obviously I go into more detail about certain things, and I did a survey as well on product management in Drupal that I sent around before the Drupal Camp England, and I actually had some submissions after I did the talk as well, so I updated with the stats, and it's quite interesting that the people say they've worked with a product manager, but then you don't see the results of that. Is some kind of interesting data that we get back from that I think that it's not so familiar. Is my summary in the Drupal community, but I think that is starting to change now. And one of the reasons I think that is Drupal CMS is a product. We're starting to see that product thinking. We're seeing local gov Drupal, these kind of like distributions that are centralized Drupal-based products that are reusable for different customer bases. So I think that product thinking is coming to Drupal is the conclusion as a spoiler for the talk, and I think it's going to benefit us, more largely as we deliver value in our Drupal teams. So yeah, that's the talk really. And since then, actually, Vijay was in the talk at Drupal Camp and created the product managers channel in Slack. So please join, and we'll ask any questions. We can collaborate in there. So yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
Great. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts as to things that product manager issue related things that Paul might think about in terms of doing his talk?
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's great what you've done. Whilst I was looking at that, I was thinking in the back of my mind, how does this interact with, and how can it overlap with, and what use do you mainly make use of Agile?
In Agile?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Agile is about iterating, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So I guess this is Agile in some way, right? So you deliver an example of Agile in my mind, now other people might have a different perception, so please chime in, but Agile, you have an idea of what things might be, right? You put down POC, let's aim for this, right? So when you're starting to deliver the POC, you're constantly being open-minded to think, this is still not in concrete, this is not set in stone, things could change. You release the POC, so you could even change the POC while you're developing it, and iterate on that. But what's most likely is this probably isn't going to happen in the way it's outlined. It's going to be considerably different. It's too far out. Yeah. The world's going to change massively by the time you get there anyway. So that probably isn't the thing you want to deliver in the first place. So that's why it's good to push that out, because it mightn't be the right thing. But then this one's probably a bit closer again. But based on releasing the POC, you'll get feedback, so and you change it.
Is discussion and analysis within groups. Yeah.
It's feedback from wherever you want to receive feedback. So it's feedback from within your team and your stakeholders, but it's feedback from the users, that it's always a big feedback loop into refining what your plan is. All of that stuff should go up through the vision stack and down.
If the users are members of the public,
yeah,
then you have to have, how would you go about finding information out about from them?
Your users.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can get it in various ways. Like, it depends where you are in your product cycle. Mm-hmm. So if you've released your POC, one of the best ways to get feedback is through people using it.
Yeah, analytics.
Yeah, analytics, and that's various ways. Yeah, one of the pieces of the full talk is talking about analytics, right, as an input, but you should take multiple inputs, because then you're going to be triangulating your opinions and your decision making for refining your MVP, and so on.
Basically, your proof of concept is more like, so that bit should be end-to-end working for your customer. So if it's a customer facing, the proof of concept can't be just finding an event, because that's not something you can send it to market. So that's why you go by if you look at waterfall approach, for example, we go vertical, like we just do build the whole find event thing, all of them first.
Exactly.
And obviously that means you can't launch it. But whereas if you go vertical, now it's a minimal product, but a customer can come, find the event, make the booking, get the email. So that works, but it doesn't have additional stuff and things like that. But if you manage to launch it, then if you have analytics or some other ways of measuring your success, like a payment or how much the purchase happening compared to old system, then you put those information into the systems. Like people used Apple Pay versus credit card, for example, then your MVP would change. Instead of using credit card, like let's add Apple Pay, or like the priority might changes from later.
Yeah.
So just following on from that, with Drupal and Drupal CMS 1 was released. So the product's out there, and analysis would be the best feedback on how people find it, what they like about it.
Right.
That would build into what they need for experience building. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Just the agency I was working with a couple of years ago brought in the idea of product manager, and they relabeled a bunch of project managers as product managers.
Right.
But in reality, I don't think most of the PMs, as they still called, really felt there was a difference or understood what the difference was and so on. So I don't have much to say on that.
Yeah.
But it's probably something that might be a good thing to touch on in your talk, because I think
absolutely
you have that experience of, well, how is this different to project management?
Exactly, and I think that's what comes up in the data, that there's a little bit of confusion about what the different things are. Like in the full slides, I talk about the difference between a product owner and product manager, but actually I think you're right. I think it needs to be extended to talk about what's the difference with a project manager. A project manager is about delivery.
Yes.
They don't decide what should be delivered. Well, they might, but they mightn't be focused on it in the right way. What does it deliver the customer value? So I think that's the difference. Is a project manager usually is a delivery manager.
I think more day to day than product owner, and then product manager is more like a tree hierarchy.
Yeah. I think in the SAFe framework they differentiate product owner and product manager. Like you say, the product manager is looking over multiple products, but then the product owner is on one. But there are pros and cons to that, and a lot of people don't like SAFe framework. Like a lot of product managers don't like SAFe framework. They want the product manager to be both, like to be looking at all of this stack, because in the one that you're talking about, you draw a line here. And the product owner looks after this stuff, and the product manager looks after this stuff, which means that you might have blind spots and you might not be listening to your delivery team and your engineers. But so it's ideally you're looking at all of that.
Would you also differentiate a business analyst? I mean, many of the projects I've worked on have had business analysts rather than product managers.
Exactly, yeah, and I think business analyst. There are some situations where product manager and a business analyst, but I kind of feel that the business analyst is more in that situation where you have a project manager and a business analyst, more the old school way of doing it. Yeah, and I think things are getting more like the product manager is essentially the business analyst and in the weeds as well.
Sure, that would be really interesting. You just described that there's an old school and there's a new school.
Yeah.
Say a bit more about, well, what's the old school? And
Yeah.
what's changing.
Yeah, I think it's like the agency model is quite common in Drupal. It's like you're already been told what to do, so you're just going to do it, kind of thing, which is quite different to product management, because you're trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, I think that kind of touches your point, like who is doing the product manager role in the system, the person who's saying like asked to do is kind of doing the thinking, and the product quality of the product based on that person's knowledge.
How close to a good idea they have, kind of thing.
Exactly. If you are lucky enough to get a person who worked on a variety of projects, then your product is going to be better.
Whereas it's not agile, actually, going back to Digby's point, is it's not agile because they've already decided and told you what to do, so you're not able to be agile.
Does the product owner need to understand graphics, content strategy, all these other things that kind of go into the product?
great question. I think that they need to understand their weaknesses. So, because I think you can't have somebody that's like superhero able to do. Some people are able to do a lot of things, but I think being able to have the right people to lean on where you're not as strong. Like if you're not as strong at design, well, hopefully you have a strong designer to work with to patch up your weaknesses, and you focus on your strengths more, and you build a good team around you, because it is about the team. The product manager doesn't do everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of more like when you get a design product, owner would say, yeah, that's good, but it doesn't
Right.
fit in this way, and maybe the want needs to be taken down a bit.
Yeah.
Needs to be, changed slightly.
Yeah, I think there are benefits to somebody who is closer to the customer side, like empathize with the user and have that kind of good eye and whatnot. I think any extra skill, you're going to be beneficial in those areas. Like say if you're creating something for the government, and if you don't know accessibility well, that's going to be a bit more painful for you then. I think you need to ramp up there. So different products will have different needs, and different PMs will need to be stronger at different suits depending on what kind of product it is, I think, as well.
Do you think once AI does all the development, does all the content, it'll just be the product owner?
They have a lot of that, the vibe coder product manager now kind of thing, where you're like going in and just, I know a good few product managers that are doing that now, but like, yeah, I don't know. I think that they have mixed results. Yeah. Yeah.
You just need a cursor, don't you? Just
Yeah.
on the screen.
Depends what kind of product, right? I don't know. They're not going to solve. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that AI space.
Take that one for another week.
Yeah. Could be changed by next week, kind of thing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, not to call time, but just the story mapping.
Yeah.
In the world of remote distributed work, what tool would you recommend for doing
Yeah.
this in a tactile way?
What tool is this, do we think? What does it look like?
Well,
There's many of that. Yeah. It's Miro, I think.
Miro
Yeah.
is the one I
Yeah.
was thinking of, yes.
Yeah, I think that's Miro. It looks like Miro. I took that from a Google search. That's not mine. Yeah, Miro is. There's FigJam as well if you're in the Figma products instead. Yeah. There's the there's Figma, but there's a FigJam that is like in it. Yeah, I used it once, but Miro is the one standout one. There's Mural. Mural is another one some teams use. Yeah, but Miro I think is the most popular. I use that all the time now.
I think Jira has something similar.
They probably do. Yeah.
Whiteboard or
Right.
something,
Okay.
They integrate
Everything.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a plugin.
Yeah. And you have to pay for it. Yeah, Miro's great. There's a free version. There's a free version as well. Give it a go. Excellent. Yeah, hopefully give the longer talk some other time, and we can go into more detail. Yeah.
We definitely need a way of encouraging more people to come along. I mean, it's great to, been a great audience this evening, but we need to sort of work
Market. Yeah.
Use your networking to its strengths to bring people along and well, hopefully revive the community here in London.
Yep, sounds good.
Thanks very much both to Paul and to Vijay for speaking this evening.
Yeah, thanks Vijay. Thanks everyone.